I've spent the last couple of days, really the last couple of years, reporting on Palestine, giving updates of what's going on the ground, trying to help people understand Israel's occupation and continued colonization of historic Palestine. But today I kind of want to try something different. So instead of giving you a report, I want to maybe tell you a story. Many people don't know this, but years ago, when I was still in college, I spent a summer in Europe, and part of that trip led me to visiting Bosnia. While I was in Bosnia, I visited Sarajevo initially, spent some days in the city, and then went to Srebrenica. Now, for those of you who don't know, Srebrenica is the site of a memorial commemorating a brutal genocide that occurred there in the 90s. Essentially, Serbian militias surrounded a UN safe zone and began pushing in. And the lack of response from air assets and the lack of ability for the UN soldiers who were there to adequately defend the population led to Serbians taking over. And what proceeded to happen was genuinely horrific. The women were separated from the men and put on buses and shipped out to other areas. Many of them endured horrific violence, really horrific experiences all their own. The men and boys, as young as I believe 11, were taken to multiple areas and executed en masse. Their deaths were brutal. The stories are brutal. The photos, the evidence of what was going on were horrific. A lot of what I saw there is still very firmly burned into my mind. The entire memorial is incredibly sobering. They've preserved a lot of sites across this area to make sure that people can understand, learn about, and see the horrors that were inflicted upon these people. This part was particularly sobering to me as I sat atop this hill and took this photo. Each one of these markers represents one of the victims who have been identified. There's something really weird about this when you're there because it is incredibly peaceful, yet represents violence on a scale that I don't think I have ever truly been able to comprehend. On each one of those markers, there is this quote that I had to translate at the time on Google Translate after taking photos because I don't speak Bosnian, that says, "And do not say of those who died on the path of Allah, they are dead. No, they are alive, but you do not feel it." This experience was a major point of inflection for me, both ideologically, as it is a large part of what drove me to be a communist, and religiously, as it's a large part of what drove me to become a Muslim. Now, for those of you who don't know, the U.S. bears an incredible amount of responsibility for this genocide, and I knew that when I went and visited, and as I sat atop this hill, I remember crying, saying over and over again that I couldn't understand how we had let this happen, that I couldn't understand how this amount of suffering was allowed to happen, how we were so soulless, so gutless to have done things that lead to this. And something I didn't get a photo of because I felt at the time that it would be genuinely horrific was family members who were visiting, right? And these are family members who were visiting, people who they were separated from and never saw again, whom they lost, who, in some instances, it took years to recover their bodies because of where these mass graves were and how Serbians tried to hide them. They would go and pray on the site and visit their loved ones and try to handle the emotions that come with that. And remember, they had been, at this point, living with this reality for decades. They were experiencing it post-mortem in a lot of ways, and they were still just in shambles, for lack of better words. And I locked eyes at one point with one of these people, and I saw a look that at the time I couldn't place. It was just a look of someone who had seen horrors that I just don't know how to describe to you. Someone who had really genuinely lost everything. And that look stuck with me. That look is permanently burned into my mind. And I have spent the last few years especially really digging into Palestine. There are a lot of reasons for that personally and politically that I have done that. And, Gaza is a major part of that. And something I have found that I can't shake is that every single time I look into the eyes of someone on video in Gaza, from the elderly, what elderly there are, to the youngest children, I see that exact same fucking look. I see in the faces of even children, as young as 8-year-olds, the same look that I saw on family members who were visiting their deceased relatives at a genocide memorial. And I don't, as a person, really know how to reconcile that. And the horrific part of it for me, I think, is that years ago, a younger me sat atop this hill asking, how could we ever let this happen? Only 2 years later, kind of discover an answer to that question. I don't know how to reconcile that. It's not a good feeling. But yeah, something we're thinking about, you know? As always, free Palestine, and have a great day.